Hey, sports cards fans, this is Ray from Philly here, and welcome to the 2024 Sports Card Hall of Fame Network's second annual Football Card Hall of Fame. Last year was the first inaugural class. It was a huge success, and I want to thank everybody who participated last year. It was a lot of fun. Giving love to football cards. You know, it's not just all about baseball. There's some awesome, historical, iconic football cards. So we're going to get right to it for the second annual Football Card Hall of Fame, and we're bringing back last year's committee leaders, which is Bart of Bart's Cards and Scott of Scotty Tradition, to take it from here. Enjoy, everybody, and don't forget to vote. So welcome, guys. How you guys doing this year?
Hey, Ray. Great to be back.
Hey, Ray. Hey, Bart. How you guys doing?
Oh, we're doing great, man. So we're looking forward to seeing the new cards that you guys added to the ballot this year, going over all the rules and regulations and what cards made it last year and so forth and so on. So yeah, we're having a blast with this, and it's a lot of fun. So you guys take it from here, and I'll see you guys at the end.
All right. Thanks, Ray. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Ray.
All right, guys. Well, welcome back. If you were here last year, and for all newcomers, we're excited to have you as well. Want to draw some attention to some awesome football cards and some icons in the hobby. We had 10 elected into the inaugural class, and we're looking to do the same this year.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun putting it together last year, and as you can see up on the screen now, just some kind of things we're going to go through tonight. 45 cards in the ballot. Last year, 10 got in, so we had to come up with 15 new ones, and we're going to kind of go through a lot of those new ones tonight. We're going to talk about what makes them cool, why they're on the ballot, and we're going to talk about 5 that got removed off the bottom of the ballot, along with showing you the 30 that were still on from last time.
Yeah, and you'll see us talk a little bit more about the new additions to this year's ballot. That doesn't take anything away from previous years or in last year's nominees that didn't quite make it. They have a ton of staying power, and a lot of them are pretty well-known cards themselves. But we want to prevent ourselves from saying the same things about the cards each year, and so we want to give a little oomph, some enthusiasm to those new cards on the ballot, and so you'll see us mention those a little bit more. But all the cards are definitely eligible for election, so please vote on all that you think are worthy that you see pictured. All right, let's get into that. All right, so to put a cap on last year's inaugural class, should be no surprises for those that are football collectors out there, but here's our 10 that you all voted in last year. All right, and sadly, we did have, to keep the ballot moving and to keep some energy going with it. We wanted to see some change from year to year. That doesn't mean these cards can't make it back on the ballot in future years, but we took the bottom 5 out just to keep some churn going there. Not a good day for all the Packers fans out there with 2 of your finest on that drop of 5, but again, we can bring those back, and we're always open in the comments to you mentioning what cards you think should be on the ballot next year.
Yeah, it's a little tough for us Packer fans, but there might be 1 or 2 new to the list this year to aid in our tiers.
Absolutely. All right, and again, these are some strong cards here, but since we want to make sure that you know that they're still available for the ballot, and you'll see them pictured here in a little bit. Here's the 30 cards that were kept from last year. No particular order other than chronological by year. Some good vintage there, and then you'll start seeing a couple of moderns. We like to keep the ballots, not just in the vintage, although obviously a lot more icons in the hobby exist in that space currently. All right, Scott, I'll let you have this one.
All right, so this is the first new card to the ballot, and the first in chronological order too, the 1888 N162 Goodwin Champions card. This is part of a 50 card set where there's a lot of sports that are featured. Baseball obviously has some key cards in there. This is the only football card, and Harry Beecher was the captain of the Yale football team. back during this time. And what I read is he actually became a sports journalist afterwards. Was a reporter of all things. So kind of interesting in that capacity. But this is mostly thought of as the first real football card. You can see that the ball he's holding in his hands doesn't even look like a modern day football. Looks more like a rock he's carrying around. But those early footballs kind of had that shape, and we definitely wanted to include some history and just some expansion of knowledge in this ballot this year. So Harry Beecher is the first one we added onto the ballot this year.
Yeah, and a great one. It just says Beecher on the card. We throw in the Harry part just to spot you if you want to look it up, but it doesn't exist on the card. And funny you said journalist. I didn't know that part, but he is a great nephew of Harriet Beecher Stowe, so I thought that was pretty cool too. And a very rare card, pop of 59 total on the PSA registry. So not too many examples out there graded. Beautiful color, obviously, and the one that we've got an example here doesn't always come quite that nice, but Goodwin Champions is an awesome set. But one football card in there.
Yeah, and I think SGC's got about 52 or something on their registry, so not too high of a combined pop there. These don't come up very often for sale.
Yeah.
I guess I might take this one. This is the 1935 Chicle Clark Hinkle. I'm proud to own two of these in PSA 8. Actually, it's only pop 18 for an 8 with only 2 higher. This is a key card for the Packer Hall of Fame. And he's a Pro Football Hall of Famer as well, played for the Packers from 1931 to 42. I think he was like a 7-time All-Pro. He did it all. He's actually kicking in this picture here. He kicked, punted, he played defense. He was a running back. When he retired in 42, Clark Hinkle led the league in rushing. So, like all time when he retired. So he was a great player, played along the same time as Bronco Nagurski. He made it in last year's ballot. And there was a play where Hinkle was on defense. He actually ran over Bronco Nagurski and fractured a rib and broke his nose in a game in I think it was 34 when that happened. Yeah. So great stories with all these old school players. And Hinkle, like I said, 7-time All-Pro. That's no slouch. He was a good player for the Packers.
Yeah, the only guy to ever knock Nagurski out of a game. Toughest guy Nagurski says that he ever played against. So pretty good there. And in a second overall Pro Football Hall of Fame class inductee too. So Pro Football recognizes him pretty high as well. And
just a beautiful card, like just its artistry, the 35 Chicle cards. There's one other one I think on the list, and we had one get in last year. These are all beautiful cards.
Yep, and the first nationally distributed football set. All right, next one. Knute Rockne. For those that know the lore of Notre Dame football in the early days, he was their leader, and so pretty famous guy. It lends itself to a little bit more of the college collectors nowadays, and I think each year passing on, sometimes a little bit of his story gets forgotten, but the coach of the 4 Horsemen, that name still rings on, and you'll see that card later as well. But Knute Rockne, another big name in the hobby, especially in the early, frontier days of football, as it were. An awesome photo as well there.
Well said. I have nothing to add. Here's another card we added this year's ballot, the 48 Bowman Kenny Washington. Obviously, Kenny Washington was a really good college football player, played for UCLA back in the day, and has his number retired there. The number 13. Fun fact, he actually played baseball with Jackie Robinson, at UCLA's baseball team, for all you baseball collectors out there. But Kenny Washington is largely credited with being the first African-American player reintegrated into the NFL in 1946. There was a 14-year ban. I think it was from 30, maybe it was a 12-year ban from 34 to 46, somewhere around there, where the league agreed to not have any black players in it. And Kenny Washington, along with a couple other players that later that year and the following years, he was the first one. So this is a pretty important card. And, he was just a great athlete all around.
Yeah, absolutely. Real popular. Had to be in the minor league football for about 6 years or so. So we only had a 3-year NFL career or pro career, as we call it. But multiple other interesting coaches to include George Hallis. But again, all those folks that were interested were having a struggle trying to get their teams to be the integrating source. LA with the Dodgers and things like that. There were progressive folks, and he was obviously a Los Angeles kid going to UCLA and everything like that. So that's where it happened. And awesome photo. I wish it was in color personally, but I love this photo and the shading and everything like that. It's a good photo, good action shot. The Blonde Bomber. Again, if you don't see the new decal, that means it's one that's been on the ballot in a previous year. So we have talked about it before, but obviously beautiful cards in 1948 leaf, just bold colors, multiple variations of a lot of the different ones, to include ones like nicknames and things like that. And the Blonde Bomber is one of them. Big time quarterback in the 40s. There were a few of them, so he's got some competition in there, but a great card. And if you're a vintage collector, one that you definitely want to have in the PC.
Yeah, that's funny. You had the black and white Bowman, and then the vibrant colors of the 48 leaf. They're two different styles around the same time, so it's kind of cool to see the contrast there. And he may have been the last Bears good quarterback. I'm not sure. Bobby Lane back in the 40s. It's been a long time.
It's been a rough go for the Bears fans and quarterbacks, that's for sure. Nice dig from a Packers fan. I like that. Chuck Bednarik. Concrete Charlie from 1948 leaf as well. Real tough card to find in almost any condition, but awesome photo with the striped arms and everything like that. Two-way player, tough as they come. Eagles great. I'm proud to be an owner of this card, and I never regretted picking it up, and I love just how holding it in my hands. It's an awesome, awesome card.
I'm very jealous of Bart. I would love to add this card someday. And it's just a beautiful card. I love defensive players too, so just a great example.
I'll pass that one to you.
This is the 48 leaf Sammy Baugh. I think it's, the Bednarik is a very important card in that set because it's scarce and you can't find it in great condition. But the Baugh, probably the more popular card of that set. Great quarterback from the time. Just a great image here of him throwing. Slinging Sammy Baugh. I like how they have the nicknames on these cards.
Love it.
Just kind of characterizes them in a little bit different way. Again, just a great card.
Yeah, and a big pioneer in the forward pass, as it were. Sammy Baugh, I'm taking it to the next level. And yeah, I agree with you. This is kind of the main card of the 48 leaf, although there are some good ones. Next up. Another great Sid Luckman. Beautiful background on this one with the yellow and blue contrast there. Another great player, great set. We were big fans of 48 leaf in the football community. For those that don't know, though, we had a major gap in years, and that's why you don't see 1916 Sporting News and Gaudies and things like that often for the football guys. We had that national Chicle set in 35, and then we had to wait around for 48 leaf. So 48 leaf is kind of our 33 Gaudi equivalent to a certain degree. And that's why the popularity, and you'll see quite a number of cards there.
Yep, well said.
I'll give you Crazy Legs.
I mean, what a great name. Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch. Fun fact, this guy is from my hometown of Wausau, Wisconsin. That's where he was born. Played for Wisconsin and Michigan in college, was just a really great college player, and played for the Rams for many years. Kind of a fun fact about him is, where did he get his nickname Crazy Legs? Well, I think my understanding, it was a sports journalist had actually called him that. He said he looked like he ran like a demented duck with his with his legs all over the place, and so that's how he ran. But he was very effective in that. And 50 Bowman is great. I just love the way these look. It's just literally the image on the card. I like the baseball version of these too, to be honest. And it's just puts all the focus on the portrait itself. And there's some great ones in this set that we'll talk about going forward. But yeah, Crazy Legs, really happy to have him on the ballot this year.
Yeah, a big-time wide receiver. I love the color on these cards. I wish they were a little bigger personally, because 50 Bowman's is slightly smaller, right? 51, They started to figure out, and 52 went giant on it. But Hutson kind of dominates the previous era, and then he kind of picks up the torch from Hutson as he's retiring. And so, Hirsch had the record for receiving yards in a season for a good 20 years after he retired. He did tie Hutson in the receiving touchdown record, and that lasted until well into the 80s. So a big-time wide receiver. He sometimes gets forgot about. There's not a lot of Rams fans out there, and they're not talking a whole lot about the Rams. So we can't let this one get forgotten for sure. Otto Graham. Just winning after winning after winning. He's probably the one that, is to blame for every quarterback getting blamed for winning or losing just because he won so many championships early on. But a great card, the big one from the 1950 Bowman set, and just an awesome pose as he's reeling back there. And of the heyday of the Browns, they haven't had those successful years, but man, they were an absolute powerhouse. And the 49ers would be known as a powerhouse in the late 40s and early 50s if they hadn't lost to the Browns in many consecutive seasons into the playoffs. But
yeah, this is an iconic card. I mean, I think it's the most expensive card in that set, and for good reason. He won a lot of games back then, and he's a fun player to read up on if you don't know much about him. Yeah, just a beautiful card.
Yelberton Abraham Tittle. This is my guy. He's a Niners guy. Started off on the Colts, went to LSU. Still got a green jersey on the card for whatever reason. But NFL MVP with the Giants after his 49ers days. Big guy in the progression of the forward pass. Threw 7 touchdowns in a game. Had the record for most touchdowns in a season for quite some time as well. So a big card. I'm a big fan of this one. Got one in really high grade as well. But a lot of popularity, not just with the 49ers. So he did it with 2 coasts, but he won a championship there, I believe, with the Giants. But also had some rough years towards the end. And he's known for some iconic photos, the agony of defeat photo that you see him sitting on his knees, bloodied up and everything at the end of his career. But obviously, being a New York player at that time will put you on the map for a lot of things too. So overall, very popular, awesome card.
Well said.
You want to take this one?
I'll take this one. Sure. It's the 1950 Topps Feltbacks Joe Paterno, and this is the only playing days card that exists of Joe Paterno, who was, the great coach at Penn State for many years, and ended up getting fired from there, and controversy along with that. But this card is a great card. These things are tiny. They're only 7/8 of an inch by like an inch and 7/16 or something like that. They're very tiny. They're still pretty pricey. The pops are not a ton. I want to say maybe around 100 or 110 of these ever graded. So
108 PSA sign.
Okay, yep, the PSA set registry. So not a lot of these floating around. You can see the pennant on the back of the college he played for, Brown University in this case. There's a couple other Hall of Famers in that set as well, but Joe Paterno is the key to that set, and just a great card, very condition sensitive too.
Yeah, the guy himself, 2-time national champ coach, 3-time Big Ten, and then he won every coaching award that you could probably think of along the way. Most victories for a coaching career because longevity wins that battle, and he was coaching some good teams along the way too. Obviously, it did take a hit towards the end of his career and lifespan there, but awesome card. Very niche set, so it's kind of cool to be able to put this on the ballot and showcase it because a lot of folks know that it exists. Again, very small, so you do want to have it slabbed up just so you don't, it doesn't slide in a crack and you never find it again. But pretty cool and a neat piece of the cardboard history for football as well.
Just an awesome card right here, the 51 Bowman Emelen Tunnell. Played for the Giants for his first part of his career, but ended up with the Packers for 3 years when Lombardi came over from the New York Giants. And he wanted Emelen Tunnell to train his defense. He was the one vet that played for the Packers that kind of helped instill that defensive mentality into them. And just so many great stories about Tunnell. I want to say he was like a 9-time All-Pro or something like that, or 8-time. He was or somewhere around there. He was really good. He was a safety, defensive player, and spent some time in the Coast Guard during World War II. I think he's credited with saving 2 different people's lives while in the Coast Guard, once in battle and once like after World War II. So just a fascinating player. And yeah, I think it says a lot about him if Lombardi is the one guy who wants to bring with from the Giants to help teach a young Packers team how to play defense in the late 50s.
Absolutely. Retired with 79 career interceptions. So that's number 2 all time now, but at the time he was the top. Paul Krause passed him by 2, but those 2 are by far and away shoulders above everybody else in that statistical. And then little fun fact, he's the first African-American inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the first defensive back inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So kind of a big deal there. And won championships with both the Giants and the Packers.
Yep.
Norm Van Brocklin. I kind of consider this one the headliner of 51. 51 is a good year for Hall of Famers and their rookie cards, but so he's not a headliner by a long shot. You know, Tom Landry gives him some competition for there, and then you have the Emelen Tunnell, but quarterbacks win those battles typically. And so Norm Van Brocklin, just, you know, the big arm of the day for, you know, maybe it's just single game performances sometimes. He still owns the record for the NFL passing yards in a game with 554, and with modern offenses to think that still stands is wild, right? I've had a good number of 500-yard games, but nobody's still topped it yet. So pretty big there. 2-time NFL champ, got an MVP on his resume, 9 Pro Bowls. And
yeah, he won one with the Rams, right? And then with the Eagles as well in 1960 after the Rams let him go.
And another card that the Rams fans that don't exist don't advocate enough, but beautiful card. And there's the Tom Landry we just mentioned, the famed coach of the Dallas Cowboys. This was on the ballot and did pretty well last year, so probably have similar expectations this year. Phenomenal pose with the beautiful colors, the red, white, and blue there. Kind of can't beat it as well. So, and a good all-around player. He doesn't get as much credit for his exploits in his playing days because of his coaching time, but he was an awesome player as well.
Yeah, one of those cards I wouldn't be surprised if they got in on this ballot or the next ballot.
Yeah, I agree. The Frank Gifford, you know, another great photo. I just picked one of these up this year, a small version. The larges are not only tough to find and expensive, but the centering is an atrocity in many of them. But awesome New York Giant running back, did multiple things as well, though. Great icon, you know, in New York. And then we all grew up seeing his wife on TV as well. So awesome card.
I'll take this one, the 1955 Topps All-American Don Hutson. This is one I wouldn't mind seeing getting in on this ballot or the next ballot. I don't have a vested interest necessarily, but just such an important player in football history. We talked about him a lot on the last video. I'm sure we did. Basically, did not unfortunately have a playing days card because of the 35. When the 35 Chicle set had come out, he hadn't been in the league yet, and he was gone all of those missing years before we got to 48 Bowman. So the 55 Topps All-American card is like the card that most of the Hall of Fame sets will recognize as his rookie card. And just a beautiful card. He did a lot for receiving in football, held a lot of records when he retired, and was just so far and away that much better above his competition as a receiver at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. 55 All-Americans, a beautiful set, iconic set in itself. Great card. And like you said, Don Hutson was a phenomenal player and just owned all of the receiving records by a mile when he retired. 4 Horsemen, I alluded to these with Knute Rockne. And I just mentioned the 55 Topps All-American set. Love this set, 100 cards, some great cards in there, in beautiful color and things. And this is just one where one of the very few cards, especially in those early sets where it wasn't just a straight up player. I can't even think of any that popping up in my head, but to see a team card like this, so pretty rare. And then I don't know what Notre Dame specifically calls their color of green, whether it's Kelly green or something like that, but that pops really well. It's awesome card.
Agreed. Beautiful card of not one player, but 4 people all on one card. I mean, you just don't see that very often, if ever. And so this card is just a special card.
Going along with it, right? We're doing chronological by year, so you're going to see 55 Topps All-Americans. Jim Thorpe, his 33 Gaudy Sport Kings got in last year, appropriately so, of course. But he also has one other kind of, it's not a playing days card, but, you know, vintage-ish card that's mainstream, and this is it. Full-size, beautiful color with the classic pose. Canton Bulldogs there, holding the leather helmet. It just doesn't get much better than this.
I want to say this was the first or second card left out last year. Maybe the autogram was up there too, but it's either like 1 or 2 of the cards that were left out last year. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it get in this time around.
Absolutely. There's your guy.
Here's another Packer, the 57 Topps Paul Hornung, just a do-it-all player back when he played for the Packers. Obviously, the Bart Starr rookie card made it into the Hall of Fame last year. So it was the 10th card that got in, so the very last one. Here's another card from a great 57 Topps set. And very important player for the Packers. Did a lot of things, like I mentioned. He even kicked field goals. He ran it. He passed it sometimes. He caught it. He did everything. So a do-it-all player in the early 60s for the Packers.
And that's one thing we lose in comparison from old players to players nowadays, just how complete of football players they were back then and how much they did for the teams. The star literally played every facet of the game for their team. And most of them were very good on both sides and special teams, which is cool. Ernie Davis, 62 Topps, and you'll see a couple of these iconic set as well, just because it all of a sudden had that horizontal appearance, and then the kind of a mixing in with that black and white photo, and then the large kind of portrait, or whether they did an action or something like that, depending on the card. Ernie Davis is one of those ones that goes down into the lore of football, what could have been. Heisman Trophy winner, national champ at Syracuse. Teams were fighting for him, for who was drafting him and how that was going to go. He was immediately traded upon drafting to the Browns. Got leukemia at age 23 and never played a professional down. The Browns still have retired his number of 45. So big storyline, what could have been. Great pose, great looking card. So happy to add it to our list this year.
Well said. Another card. I can take this one. This is another card from that great 62 Topps set. Very condition sensitive, obviously, with the black borders. The action shot on the one side, the pose on the right side. And this is Fran Tarkenton, his rookie card for the Vikings. Very mobile quarterback for the time. Ran around all over the place. Just a great player for those Vikings teams back then. So this was on our list last year and did not drop off in the top 5. So it's back again, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it get in this time or the next time around either.
Yeah, the Vikings get lost over the years because they were so close in the 70s, but just couldn't quite get it done.
Exactly.
So they get forgotten about, but he was leading the charge. All right, next up. Same set. Again, I had to do the gray background here. Shout out to Mike for putting these slides together and everything, but to capture those black borders, significant amounts of chipping for 62 Topps. So you just swallow that one if you're buying the card, and you just hope that you get a nice registration on the photo and some good centering, because you're just going to get that chipping. But Mike Ditka changed how we started perceiving tight ends, put up big numbers when it was completely not expected, and a lot of those guys were just extra blockers and things like that. Had a little speed to him in his younger days as well, so you see some highlights in it. You get pretty impressed, and it's hard to believe it's the same guy you grew up watching in the 80s and 90s coaching the teams, but he was a pretty significant player back then.
Yeah, other than like George Halas, you could maybe call this guy Mr. Bear, because he played for them, he coached for them, just seemed to have his whole career over there. And the Bears do have a very good collecting base, and this card is very popular with them, and certainly goes for quite a bit of money as well.
Gets a little love from the Cowboys fans as he finished his career there too. Len Dawson. So we had the 63 Allworth fall off the ballot this year. The 63 Len Dawson here stayed. AFL issue set. So the AFL issues don't get a lot of love in the 60s because they were separate for a couple years. Beautiful card. Obviously, you get the complementary colors here for Len Dawson and the Chiefs. Many of us remember the photo where he was smoking a cigarette at halftime. I'll never forget seeing that one or whatever, but just a great quarterback on the AFL side of things and a beautiful set and card itself.
Yeah, he had a cigarette and a Fresca, right, at halftime. That's what everybody needs at halftime. But yeah, this card you never find centered either. I've looked at a ton of these over the last couple of years. And it's the same with the Allworth. They just don't come centered very often from this set. So very difficult in high grade, and a card that's absolutely shot up in price over the last couple of years post-pandemic for sure. And I haven't been able to find a decent copy to add just because, they're so tough in high grade.
Tough. Yeah, you're praying for 60-40 centering at best. That's
Right.
That's what you're praying for. You're not going to find much better than that. Next up, Mr. Cowboy, Bob Lilly. Just the head of the Doomsday defense for those that remember that and the Cowboys, but all pro 7 times for first team, 11-time Pro Bowler, and he's a big Texas favorite as well, not just from the Cowboys, but he came out of TCU as well. So he has been a Texas boy through and through, and very popular. This card is an SP as well, and then so it's a high demand, a little bit more expensive than you would expect a lot of times for that grade, especially that era of cards and things. But nice color contrast there from the 63 tops, and that's the NFL issue of the year, as 63 Fleer was at AFL.
Yeah, it's a beautiful card from a set I like a lot, and I believe Bob Lilly was the Cowboys' first ever draft pick.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. So for many reasons, this is a card that most Cowboys collectors would probably want to have in their collection.
I'll give it to you.
Another card from the same set, which I'm just a big fan of it. The color coordination of this set is just awesome. You can see the yellow borders and the green mixed in. Very tough card to find centered as well, and obviously the chipping was a problem on these as well. Ray Nitschke, I think he's like 27 in this picture, but it looks like he's about 57, and it just spoke to the tough life that Ray Nitschke led on the streets before he actually became the player that he was. Funny enough, he was actually a teddy bear off the field and was always great in the community and a really nice guy, but on the field, he was an absolute animal and a great player for many years for the Packers and a Pro Football Hall of Famer as well. And I actually really like this pose as well on this card. It's just synonymous with those great 60s Packer teams. Just toughness.
Absolutely. Dick Butkus. Geez, hopefully everybody knows who this is, right? We've seen him on commercials and everything in our lifetime as well. But everybody talks about this. Our college, defensive award is named after him and everything. Again, a repeat from last year, so we don't have to say too much on him, but iconic card from 66 Philadelphia. Philadelphia in the middle 60s there were the NFL's issue of cards. And just great cards, great player, and that's his rookie.
Butkus and Nitschke, the debate will go on who is the best, linebacker from the 60s. Yeah. But anybody in that debate, I could accept either answer. They were both so good.
Sure, no question about it. Butkus gets a little bit extra nod being a bigger media market at the time, right?
I would agree.
Sayers as well, a Chicago Bear. Beautiful pose on this card too, right? Iconic. Again, a repeat from last year. Did well and should continue to do well in the voting until it gets in. But Gale Sayers, short-lived career, but just in a tremendous impact as a halfback and as a returner while he was in. And so he's I believe the shortest tenured Doug probably got him beat, but a very short tenured NFL career that still got him into the Hall of Fame.
Doesn't it kind of remind you of the Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch pose, only the other way? Now that I look at him. So yeah, just a great pose on a card. What else can you say?
And I love that it's still the same uniform as the Bears, pretty much. I like that.
Yep.
68 Tops, Bob Griese. So 68 Tops is the first year of the football card merger between the AFL and the NFL. So now we got all of the teams back on one set and 68 Tops. And he carries kind of that year because it's not really a big year for Hall of Fame rookies. You got Floyd Little in there as well, but he's it. And then obviously the famed Dolphins teams of the 70s, of course, the undefeated team. The Dolphins were the highest winning professional team of any sort in the 70s, and he was their leader the whole time. He was injured for the majority of their undefeated season. Played the first couple games and was injured for the rest, but relieved Earl Morale in the playoffs and then carried him all the way to the championship. So great player. Obviously, you probably saw him in the announcer's booth for some time, and his son is still running around doing those things as well.
Fun fact about this set, the Packers and the Raiders cards are both horizontal, and they look completely different than all the rest because they met in Super Bowl II, and they kind of paid homage to those two teams in this set.
I like that aspect of the set, too. They did well with that. The Juice, OJ, 1970 Tops. What most of the time I consider a relatively ugly looking set. When I see the color pops and the contrast and the recognizable face of OJ, all of a sudden I have better feelings about 1970 Tops. Just a phenomenal player. First guy to run 2,000 yards in a season. Finished his career with the 49ers. I'll put that plug in there as well. But we all knew who he is. Awesome card. And he needs to be in the Hall of Fame soon. I'll give you the Bradshaw here.
Yeah, the 71 Tops, Terry Bradshaw. Beautiful card. Obviously, red borders, colored borders. There's a lot of blue bordered cards in this set as well. And they're very tough. They chip on the corners, and they're very tough and high grade. Also tough to find centered. But obviously, we got to have the rookie card of Terry Bradshaw, who was part of those great Steelers teams of that era. We'd be remiss if we left this one out.
Yeah, you see some extra popularity with those years that just pop with different colored borders after several years of the white. And Terry Bradshaw it is. Pretty handsome fella back in his day as well. And 4 Super Bowls. People pay attention and collect, right? Mr. Clean here, Roger Staubach, Captain America, Naval Academy, Heisman Trophy winner, did his service and then came to the Cowboys afterwards. So he lost a couple of his potentially prime years or building up towards his prime years, but came into the league acting like he didn't skip a beat. Some great Dallas teams in the 70s, and he led them through it. And it's just, he was not just the good NFL player, but he was who all of the parents of that day were telling their kids to emulate as well.
Yeah, a card that's hard to find centered, and I haven't heard anybody actually say anything bad about Roger Staubach ever. So just that's the kind of player he was, just super clean, squeaky clean, and was a great player too for his time. Great, very efficient player, if I recall, for his era.
Yeah, and like you said, centering issues on this set. Great color if you find it with the right coloring. A fair number of print dots happen on a lot of these cards as well. Next up, Earl Campbell. So a monster of a running back. He was so rough that his career was probably cut short a little bit. The back end of his career, his yards and statistics aren't quite as crazy as early on, but he came in so tremendous. Offensive player of the year for the first 3 years he came into the league, to include an MVP in there and to include a rookie of the year as well. His only mainstream card of any year. He's got a couple in that set as the rushing leaders and stuff, but this is his one and only just base set card. Earl Campbell, gotta love it. Texas Longhorn and Houston Oilers, great.
Heisman Trophy winner in college and MVP winner in the NFL. There's not that many of those, I don't think.
Love me some 82 tops. This is my favorite set of all of them, I think. But Lawrence Taylor, you can't compare people from eras, but there was nobody even close in his era as far as a defensive guy. Just a absolute mayhem on the field. Great looking card. Got all the things that you want of, those 80s Giants with that helmet and everything else. Sack leader when he hung it up. Obviously, some folks had passed him up, but a monster and a great card.
Yeah, just him and Reggie White, I think, from that era. That's the other person I'd compare him to. They're a little bit different players, though, I think.
Yeah. Well, linebacker for the end, right?
What they did, but yeah, 100% agree. This is a great card, and I don't remember where it finished last year, but one I wouldn't be surprised to see in this or the next ballot.
84 tops, great set. Sometimes some centering issues there, but some great cards and some key Hall of Famers, especially if you're me and Scott's age, you grew up seeing these guys in the heyday of their careers, and as they finished, a couple of great cards, and Dan Marino is absolutely one of them. The big arm of the day for sure. First guy to throw 5,000 yards in a season, had the touchdown record for quite some time before it got passed up at 48 touchdowns. Did not win a Super Bowl. He went to one and didn't quite work out for him against the 49ers, but big time passing numbers of his era, and was leading that charge in all of those categories before modern day passing came along and some other numbers passed. But great card, beautiful colors on this as well. Just an icon of the 80s. Elway's next up in 84 tops. Not the best of poses per se, but complementary colors. And then we all know who Elway is because he stuck around the game, not just after playing a pretty long and successful career with a couple of Super Bowl rings and things, but in the executive office as well. That's all you.
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite cards that I have in my collection. Is the 84 USFL Reggie White. Just a great portrait shot of him. Some of the players were actually going to the USFL at the time when they came out of college. Reggie White came out of Tennessee. He was kind of a local guy. He didn't really want to leave the area, and Memphis is in Tennessee, and ended up playing for the Memphis Showboats his first season or two. And it's funny, there was just a lot of talk about, could Reggie do this in the NFL? Because he was really good for the Memphis Showboats, or is it just a competition? Well, it turns out he could do it in the NFL too. He could manhandle people, didn't matter what league he was in, and went on to have a great career in the NFL, obviously. But this is his first card right here, the 84 USFL card. His first NFL card would be the 86 tops, where he's featured on the Eagles. But this is one of my personal favorites right here, just with the red, white, and blue kind of USFL look. I think it's just a great card. Very tough to find in high grade, though, because of the magenta back borders. Almost impossible, and also centering, a big issue with these as well.
Absolutely. Steve Young, also in that set. And these came in little box sets and things, and so if those boxes got jostled around, the edges didn't do too well. So, and of course, that magenta backing is going to take a lot of that suffering. But Steve Young, big 49ers great, obviously. Went to the USFL first, then played around with the Buccaneers, was our backup a little bit, and then once Montana was out, Young showed up and did it. His career was significantly highlighted by his efficiency and passer rating that hadn't quite been seen for folks, especially on the consistent levels that he was doing. And then obviously well known for some good scrambles as well, and some key times. Big time scramble against the Vikings in a playoff game. That's one of the all-time NFL highlights, to be honest. But great card, and a little bit of a bland jersey there. So it's kind of weird to put it up on the wall with all my other 49ers, but I love this card. Well, you faced him twice a year, so I'll give him to you.
He's a great player. 89 score Barry Sanders. He also has a tops issue as well that is fairly popular, but this is probably the most popular of his rookie cards. And a lot of people consider him the best runner of the football ever. So that's no light thing. I mean, you have your Jim Browns of the world, your Walter Paytons of the world. Barry Sanders, a little bit different kind of running back. He's the first one to really just make some of the moves that he made. The Jim Browns of the world wanted to run right through you. They kind of, or Jim Taylors, they wanted to seek you on the field and run you over. Whereas Barry Sanders was just so elusive. He just was a different kind of back, and I don't think anybody had really seen anything quite like that. And then there's just a little bit of mystique with Barry Sanders, retiring early like he did, and he kind of left us, he kind of went out on top, like left us wanting more. And so just an awesome player, and this is his rookie card.
Yeah, and I'll add to it a little bit just for the set itself. So in baseball, you guys know in the 80s, you guys had your Fleer and your Donrusses, and in addition to your tops, and you had them much earlier in the decade. Football guys, we were stuck with the tops, which if you look across the years of the 80s, were pretty bland as far as their change-ups and things, white borders and stuff. So 89 Score came out as a slightly higher tier product, and then all the color and things. I wish this one had a better photo, but a lot of them just did have those portrait shots, but very iconic set, and this is the lead one in that set for sure. And greatest running back I've ever seen. New edition, like this one. I need to add one of these to the collection. I'm a big guy. Pro Set's what got me started in the hobby because it was printed overprinted like you wouldn't believe back then, and it was very cheap to find. And so, and a kid on a tiny little card budget, I could buy boxes of these in the mid 90s for like $8 or something like that and go through it. Never pulled one of these. Allegedly, Scott informed me on this one. It's a 10,000 print run. I'm not sure if those all ever made it to the market, and I'm not sure if, there's probably still tons of them sitting in boxes somewhere. But I don't know if issued earlier than this. Definitely not in football. And then to have the trophy and the one we still use today, named after Lombardi, it's just awesome with the fireworks in the background and everything else. And a big chase day.
Yeah, this was one of the first insert chases almost. And you think 10,000 is a lot, but there was a lot of Pro Set produced back then. And anybody who was collecting around then would say to actually pull one of these was like pulling a needle out of a haystack, because you'd have to go through a lot of Pro Set in order to find one of these cards. And I think that the overall pop report on these is about 225 or something like that, total graded. So there's a lot that are not graded out there, or who knows where they're at, probably still sitting in Pro Set boxes. But ironically, there's never been a PSA 10 graded of this card. So it's kind of tough on condition, but I mean, to feature a card of the league's trophy of all things is pretty cool, I thought, and a kind of a cool addition to this year's ballot.
Yeah, for years the card actually existed because I had opened so much Pro Set and been to enough shows as a kid. I had never seen one. It wasn't until I found eBay that I found one of these actually existing. So they are pretty rare. Obviously, they're coming to the market a little bit more because of that access, but very tough chase card and awesome looking card. And in stark contrast to the rest of Pro Set, because that was a relatively rough looking set. I like it. Next up, an absolute classic, 1990 Score supplemental. Another, the supplemental was harder to come by. It came in another little, box set in addition to the standard pack set you would got. 90 Score was a very cheap set, so I started on that one as well with a lot of neat cards. But those supplementals were, I think, at the time harder to find. Those little box sets. And one big card is in existence in there. And then when you have those little boxes and the things are bouncing around, you're going to chip corners, and then centering and quality control on 90 Score was pretty bad as well. As that's probably a trend that we've been saying on a lot of these things. But Emmitt Smith, all-time leading rusher in the NFL, just a monster of the 90s. What else to say about him? But, it definitely, once people start getting around to voting towards closer to modern cards, this should absolutely be at the forefront with that Barry. I'll give you this one.
The 98 SP Authentic, Peyton Manning. This is a really sort of iconic set, I think. There's some big rookie cards in this one. Peyton Manning, Randy Moss, who just fell off the ballot this past year, but I assume we'll be making a comeback at some point. And Charles Woodson's also from this year. There's a few others as well. But Peyton Manning, obviously one of the most prolific quarterbacks in recent history of all time, really, and just had a unique way of approaching the game from a cerebral standpoint. And this card is very condition sensitive, chipping on all the edges just because of how the card was made. You'll notice that a lot. So very difficult to find in high grade, and just a beautiful looking card. You got the portrait kind of on one side and a little bit of action pose on the other, kind of a la the 1962 set almost.
Yeah, and the first year where we see the key cards be numbered, right? So we had SPL the year prior to that, but 98 they come out numbered. So creates a little bit more of that rarity and that chase. They come out as a base like this, and there's also die cut versions as well. But great set, and it kind of changed the game a little bit in the 90s as far as some of the higher end stuff, and he's carrying the torch for that set. Well, Tommy, I'll take this one just because, I'm a hater, but I still love the card, right? Tom Brady has, ruined many teams' postseasons for 20 years. Thankfully, he's retired, but the greatest of all time as far as a quarterback goes, because I just can't argue anything. He's got everything that you would want and that you would measure for that. But playoff contenders, not the first year of playoff contenders, but a relatively new product at the time, and he's eventually, because they were kind of popular back then, but not as. And then all of a sudden, when a couple of championships and people started chasing, all of a sudden, playoff contenders is an absolute monster of a set that everybody looks forward to, and he's carrying that. It's an interesting one in that they probably could have done better with the design, because a lot of times the autos are pretty hard to see here, but for football. This card is the first one that reached those just interstellar numbers as far as sale prices that we hadn't seen before. And all of a sudden, we became a little bit more legit of collectors on the football side, as baseball was much more well established. So this one did very well for the football hobby, and so absolutely deserves to be on the ballot.
And here is his SP Authentic version, so his non-auto. I'd say this is his. I don't know if it's his best non-auto card. I'm not sure about that. The Bowman Chrome's actually gotten fairly popular in recent years as well. But the SP Authentic, I think, is his registry rookie card that's used for a lot of those sets. So it definitely carries a bit of a premium. And these are numbered as well. The SP Authentics did hold pretty well over the years. They did make a pretty high quality card. But yeah, I mean, this is best quarterback of all time, and this is his rookie card. So it's definitely going to be on the ballot.
And that, last but not least, Patrick Mahomes, and clearly the most modern card that we have on here, the 2017 Panini Prism. It's also, you'll see on the label Prism as well, a second Prism word, because the rookies of 2017 Panini Prism all came in that Prism, as they call it, but if it was Topps Chrome, it would be the refractor type or something like that. It was a 300 card set, the 200 veterans on the front end, and then the 100 rookies on the back end. 19 different variations of this card. We're going after just that baseline Prism card there, but Pat Mahomes, you see him every year now. He's a perennial two-time Super Bowl champ at this point. Been a Pro Bowler every year except his rookie season, and he continues to put it together, sometimes when his receivers even refuse to catch the ball. But he kind of has ushered us into a new era of cards and collecting and things like that with his hobby power. Dying down a little bit right now, but it might catch some more momentum here in the next week or two.
Yep, already two-time Super Bowl champion, kind of the face of the NFL right now. Little thing about this card is a lot over his right shoulder. There's always a little divot, at least not on every card, but on a lot of them. I have a PSA 9 version myself, and there's a little tiny divot right there. So there must have been something in the production process of this card that divot will show up on the cards. And I'm remembering buying hobby boxes of these for like $130 back when they came out in 2017, because I was probably trying to get my Aaron Jones rookie card, which comes from the same year, and probably just overpassing Patrick Mahomes because we didn't know what we know now about him.
Right. and a fair amount of centering issues on these, which are drawn, those little, I don't know, for lack of better terms, those little triangles that are made on the midpoints on each side. You can kind of often see one bigger than the other. A little bit top to bottom, but not quite as bad in this year. Top to bottom gets pretty rough in some of the other Prism years there. But pop of this and the PSA side is over 5,000 at this point. I would say that there's quite a good number of them more out there that just haven't been graded. But because it wasn't a low print run for printing me Prism, but great card.
Sorry, 10s are not guaranteed for this card either. It's just because of those attributes.
The mainstay of the pot, or the majority of the pops, are 8s and 9s. 10s are rough. They're tough. All right, and that was the 45. We appreciate you sticking for an hour as we talked about them. We want to draw your attention to the actual ballot. There'll be a link in the description below. We look forward to your participation, and myself and Scotty will take to the social media platforms that we know and continue to promote this. So help us do that as well. And we look forward to participation. And if you didn't see one of your interested or what you hope to see in the 45, let us know in the comments. That was what built some momentum to see the 62 Ernie Davis get in there as well.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, and I encourage everybody to vote. We had a great year last year, first year of the ballot, and I hope that continues this year. Still a ton of good cards out there to vote for. We'll have enough ammo for cards here for years, I think, with this project.
Yeah, and shout out to the rest of the team, of course, Ray from Philly and Mike, This Baseball Card Life, and Vic as well, doing great things. And this is one of the sports that we do here at the Sports Card Hall of Fame Network, and we're looking to continue to promote that and build that.